And we're back with another knowledge lesson. Today's knowledge lesson is Unit 9, Lesson 2, and this story is called Rumpelstiltskin. So while you are listening, I want you to remember all the elements of fairy tales that you did yesterday with Sleeping Beauty. And if you don't remember, don't worry. We're going to review them in a second. And we're back today with another story. Who remembers the name of the story that we read yesterday? The fairy tale from yesterday. If you said Sleeping Beauty, that is correct. Today we're going to jump into another story, but before that, let's review some of the things that we know about the elements of a fairy tale. Let's do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down activity to review what we know about the elements of fairy tales. Here are the following elements of fairy tales. Now, some of them are elements, so I want you to give a thumbs up, and some of them are not. I want you to give a thumbs down. Get ready. Once upon a time, the setting. If you said thumbs up, that is correct. Next one, magical characters like fairies. If you said thumbs up, that is correct. Next one, non-fiction. If you said thumbs down, that is correct. Fantasies. If you said thumbs up, that is correct. Greek gods. If you said thumbs down, that is correct. Problems and solutions. If you said thumbs up, that is correct. Ending in happily ever after. If you said thumbs up, that is also correct. Good job. Yesterday, we used this fairy tale elements chart in order to organize the information that we learned in our story. So let's review what we learned about Sleeping Beauty because we're going to be making a new one for today's story, Rumpelstiltskin, and we will be comparing both stories. Here goes. So yesterday's setting was once upon a time. And when is that? That's a long time ago. Characters are royals. Royalty include kings, queens, prince, and princesses. The magical characters in that story were fairies, because fairies are not real. Next, fantasies. The fairies, gifts to the young princess, the evil and good spells, and the sleeping enchantment. These are all fantasy events because these are not events that can happen in real life. The next one, problem. The 13th fairy was really evil and upset she wasn't invited, so she cast an evil spell on the princess. Solution. The 12th fairy softens the curse. The king offers that all the spindles should be burned, and the prince kisses the princess, and she wakes up. The end. At the end, there was a wedding for the prince and the princess held with a great feast and rejoicing, meaning happiness. And they lived happily ever after, together for the rest of their days. Again, in fairy tales, they always live happily ever after. Now we will use this chart to organize some information from yesterday's fairy tale. So, in the fairy tale, we learned about events that are fantasy and events that are reality. Fantasies are things that are imagined or magical events, and realities are things that we can find, see, or do in real life. So now, I'm going to show you some images, and you're going to put them on the fantasy side or on the reality side. What do you see here? Does this image show fantasy or does it show reality? If you said reality, that is correct. This is an image of the royal family, and they're kings and queens in real life. Next image. What do you see here? Does this image show fantasy or reality? If you said fantasy, that is correct. This is the image of a good fairy, and fairies do not exist in real life. What do we see in this image? Yes, this is an image of the enchanted princess, meaning the spell that puts her to sleep for 100 years. Is this something fantasy, meaning made up or imagined, or is it reality? If you said fantasy, that is correct. This goes on the fantasy side. Good job. What object did Sleeping Beauty prick her finger with in the last read aloud? If you guessed a spinning wheel, that is correct. Spinning wheels are tools used to spin thread and yarn. In today's read aloud, a spinning wheel is again part of the problem in the main character's story, but in a different way. Listen carefully for what a spinning wheel has to do with a character's problem and what the solution is. If some of you are already familiar with this story, that's great. Listen up, this might be a whole new version of this story. The title is Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, there was a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. She was so beautiful and clever that he could not help boasting about her. A miller is a person who grinds grain to make flour. This miller boasts or speaks very proudly about his daughter, saying she's clever. This means she is smart and able to figure things out quickly. One day, the miller happened to come before the king, and to impress the king, he began boasting about his daughter. And before he knew it, he found himself saying that his daughter was so amazing and so wonderful, why she could even spin gold to straw. That, said the king, is a talent worth having. Bring your daughter to me, and let us see what she can do. Remember, thread and yarn are made by spinning plant parts and animal wool. Do you think his daughter can really spin straw into gold? Let's see what happens next. When the girl was brought to the palace, the king led her to a room that was almost full of straw. He pointed to the spinning wheel and said, "Get to work. You must spin this straw into gold by early morning, or else." The poor miller's daughter, of course, she could not spin straw into gold. What would she do? She couldn't think of anything, and in the end, she sat down and began to cry. What do you think she'll do? And then, all of a sudden, click clack, the door opened and a little man walked in. "Good evening, miller's daughter," he said. "Why are you crying?" "Because," she answered, "I must spin all this straw into gold before morning, and I don't know how." Do you think she finds it strange that this little man is in the castle? Where do you think he even came from? Then the little man came close to her and whispered, "What will you give me if I spin it for you?" "Why, I'll give you my necklace," she stammered. The little man took the necklace and stood at the spinning wheel and whir, whir, whir. He spun, and by sunup all the straw had been spun into gold. When the king arrived at sunrise, he was amazed. But the sight of all the gold made the greed for more grow in him. What does it mean for someone to feel greed? So the king took the miller's daughter to a larger room filled with yet more straw and told her that she must spin all this into gold in one night. Again, the girl did not know what to do and sat down crying when, click clack, the door opened and in walked the little man. "Crying again, I see," he said. "So I suppose you have to spin all this gold too. What will you give me if I do it for you?" "The ring from my finger," answered the girl. So the little man took the ring and stood at the spinning wheel and whir, whir, whir. He spun, and by sunup all the straw had been spun into gold. When the king arrived, he was overjoyed at the sight, but hunger for still more gold. So he stood at the miller's daughter and brought her to an even larger room filled with straw and said, "Spin all this in one night, and if you succeed, well then you shall be my wife." To succeed is to do well or to reach a goal. Do you think the daughter will succeed in meeting the king's demands? The king had hardly left the room when click clack the door opened and in came the little man asking, "What will you give me if I spin all this straw for you one more time?" "I have nothing left to give," the girl answered sadly. "Then promise me this," said the little man. "Promise me that when you are queen, you will give me your first child." The miller's daughter thought there was really very little chance that she would ever be queen, and so she promised, and the little man set to work at once. Do you think the daughter's promise will cause any problems for her later? Let's see. By morning, the gold was piled so high that it reached the ceiling. When the king arrived, he was pleased to see all the gold he wanted. He married the miller's daughter and made her queen. In a year's time, the king and queen had a fine little baby. She thought no more about the little man or her promise to him. Then one day, as she sat alone in her room rocking her baby, click clack, the door opened and in walked the little man who said, "Now it's time for you to give me what you promised me." The queen, filled with fear, held the baby tightly. "Please," she said, "I will give you all the riches of the kingdom. Only leave me my child." But the little man said, "No, I would rather have a living being than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to weep and wail, and the little man felt pity for her. Pity is feeling sadness for someone who is unhappy. Okay, I'll give you one chance," he said. "In 3 days, if you can guess my name, then you may have your child." And then he was gone as quickly as he had come. The queen laid awake all night thinking of all the names she had ever heard. She sent a messenger to ride through the land and collect all the names that could be found. And when the little man came the next day, she tried all that she had been thinking of: Alexander, Casper, Doolittle, Elgington, Freeland, and Balzar, and many more. But each time the little man said, "That is not my name." The next day, the queen sent servants all around the kingdom to find the most unusual names. And when the little man came, she tried them. "Are you called sheepskinks, roast ribs, snickerdoodle, winklehopper?" But each time the little man only said, "That is not my name." What do you think the little man's name might be? On the third and last day, the queen was worried sick. She held her child tight and wondered what to do when clink clank, the door opened and in walked, no, not the little man, but the messenger the queen had sent in search of names. He bowed to the queen and said, "My lady, as I passed through the woods last night, I came to a high hill, and near was a little house, and outside the little house was a fire burning. And around the fire danced a funny little man. And as he hopped up and down, he sang, 'Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, and then the fair queen's child I'll take. And no one can deny my claim, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name.'" A claim is a statement or something that is yours. What is the man's claim? The messenger left, and almost as soon as he had gone, the little man arrived. The queen greeted him and asked, "Is your name Jack?" "That's not my name." "Then are you called Harry?" "That's not my name." "Then perhaps," said the queen, "your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "No, no, no! Who told you that?" cried the little man. And in his anger, he stamped with his right foot so hard that it went into the ground right up to his waist. Then he stamped his other foot, and he went deep into the ground, way over his head. And the queen and her child never feared him again. The end. Hope you enjoyed the story. Now we're going to move into our comprehension conversation, and here we go with question number 1. What talent does the father boast that his clever daughter has at the beginning of the tale? Once upon a time, there lived a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. She was so beautiful and clever that he could not help but keep boasting about her. The miller happened to come before the king, and to impress the king, he began boasting about his daughter, and before he knew it, he found himself saying that his daughter was so amazing and so wonderful that she can spin straw into gold. What problems does the miller's boasting make for his daughter? When the girl was brought to the palace, the king led her to the room that was almost full of straw. He pointed to the spinning wheel and said, "Get to work. You must spin straw into gold by early morning or else." The poor miller's daughter, of course, she could not spin straw into gold. What would she do? She could think of nothing, and in the end, she sat down and began to cry. What does the daughter promise the little man each night that he spins gold for her? She promised him 3 things. What are those 3 things? You can pause the story and go back and re-listen anytime. She offers him many things. One of the things that she offers him is her necklace. The next time, she offers him her ring. And the third time, she had nothing else to do and nothing else to offer but to offer her first child. This question is strictly your opinion. There is no right or wrong answer here. Do you think the daughter made a good decision to promise her first child to the little man? My opinion might be different from yours, but I think she made a terrible decision. She didn't even think that she would have a child, and without even planning ahead for the future, she just offered up her child. But it's kind of understandable because she felt like she was in danger if she didn't get that straw spun into gold. That's what I think. When the little man goes to see the queen to make his claim for the child, the queen starts to cry and he feels pity for her. Then he gives her a chance to get out of her promise. What does the queen have to do in order to keep her child? Let's go back into the text to see if we can find that detail. The queen, filled with fear, held her baby tightly. "Please," she said, "I'll give you all the riches of the kingdom. Only leave me my child." But the little man said, "No, I'd rather have a living being than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to weep and wail, and the little man felt pity for her. That means he felt sorry for her because she was unhappy. Okay, I'll give you one chance," he said. "In 3 days, if you can guess my name, then you may keep your child." And then he was gone as quickly as he had come. Next question. How does the fairy tale end? Is it a happy ending for the queen? The queen guesses Rumpelstiltskin's name. He is so angry that he stomps himself into the ground. And she lives happily ever after. What lesson or morals can we learn from this tale? So a lesson or a moral is something that the story teaches you about life or about how you should behave. One moral that I learned from this story is you should be very careful about the promises you make because you never know what you have to do to keep your promise and how it might affect you later. Now we're going to zoom in and focus on specific characters. I want you to think about characters that you heard about in the read aloud. I want you to pick one character to focus on. With someone in your house, I want you to describe this character and their role in the story. Think about how the character is dressed. Is the character royalty? Is it a magical character? And would you expect to find this character in a story other than this tale? And in what setting might you find this character? I'm going to give you a second. Pick your character, then I'll reveal mine. So I went back into the story. I pressed pause and I chose my character. The character I chose was Rumpelstiltskin. So he is dressed in a red top, gold belt, and green and yellow pants. He has golden blonde hair, a beard, and he's kind of short compared to the other characters. He's not royalty at all, so he's not a king or a queen, but he is a magical character. His character can spin straw into gold, which is like a magical power. And would I expect to see him in another fairy tale? No, I don't think so, especially since in this one, he stomped himself right into the ground. And that's my character. Now you pick one and you do it. Try it. In the read aloud you heard, so the king took the miller's daughter to an even larger room filled with straw and said, "Spin all this in one night, and if you succeed, then you shall be my wife." Say the word with me, succeed. One more time, the word is succeed. Succeed means to do well or reach a goal. I knew Roy would succeed at earning a black belt in karate because she worked so hard. What kinds of things help people succeed? Try to use the word succeed when you tell me about it. For example, I succeed when I have support from my family. I succeed when I use a recipe and follow instructions to bake a cake. What are some examples or things that help you succeed? Thank you for sharing. What's the word we've been talking about again? Yes, the word is succeed. Now let's play a game. I will name two choices. You will decide which choice will help someone be more likely to succeed. Remember to answer in complete sentences and use the word succeed in your answer. All right, here goes. Let's start number one. Listening carefully to the teacher or not paying attention in class. Yep, listening to the teacher will help you succeed. Number two, practicing your violin every day or deciding not to practice at all. Which one will help you succeed? Yep, practicing your violin every day will help you succeed. Number three, finishing your homework in front of the television or working on it carefully at home. Yep, working at it carefully at home will help you succeed. Last one, number four, practicing free throws or hoping that you'll make a basket at the basketball game. Which one will help you succeed? If you said practicing free throws, you are so right. Yep, practicing free throws will help you succeed. Thanks for playing this game with me. Now you know about the word succeed. So now here for your display is the Rumpelstiltskin story elements chart. So I prepared this chart in advance and I recorded some brief information about the read aloud. Now let's review some key information because we will need this to do our exit ticket. Setting. So the setting for Rumpelstiltskin starts with the phrase once upon a time. Once upon a time always indicates that a story is going to begin, and it's always when? A long time ago. The setting in this story in particular all happened in the king's castle. Next, characters. There are real characters in this story, and there are magical ones. The king, the messenger, the miller, the miller's daughter / queen, she turned into a queen, are all real characters. The next character, Rumpelstiltskin, was magical. He was magical because he had a talent. What could he do with the straw? If you said spin it into gold, that is correct. And that's magical because humans cannot spin straw into gold in real life. Fantasy events. Rumpelstiltskin spinning gold from straw and stomping himself into the ground at the end. These are all things that are made up. The next one, problems. The problem in the story is that the king told the miller's daughter that she had to spin gold from straw. She later found out that if she did not do this, she would be punished. So, crying and weeping, she ran into Rumpelstiltskin, who each time she needed help made a deal with her. First, she gave him a necklace, then a ring, and lastly, he wanted her first child. She said yes because she never thought that she would be queen. But then, in the end, he came to get what she had promised him. Solution. Rumpelstiltskin spun gold for her, and the messenger was able to discover his name. Ending. The messenger discovered Rumpelstiltskin's name and told the queen. The queen was able to keep her baby, and she lived happily ever after, as everyone does in fairy tales. The end. Now let's use this information to answer a few questions. I want you to write each question down on a piece of paper. What I will do is that I will show the question, read the question twice, and then you can pause the video to answer and then move on to the next question. Get ready. Question number 1 is coming up. What words were used to describe the setting and the beginning of both stories? What words were used to describe the setting and the beginning of both stories? Write this down. Pause the video. Question 2. What kinds of characters are the same in these two stories? What kinds of characters are the same in these two stories? Pause the video. Write the question down. Question 3. Were the endings of these two stories similar? In what ways? Were the endings of these two stories similar? In what ways? Pause the video. Write the question down. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I'm proud of you. Your teachers are proud of you. Your family's proud of you. You guys are killing it with this virtual learning. I'm loving all the amazing work that I'm seeing. I want you to make sure that when you are done writing these questions and the answers to the questions, to upload them to your student portfolio on Class Dojo. So please make sure that if you're not sure to the answer to a question, you can pause the video and go back. Excited to see all your great work. Keep up the amazing work. I miss you all. Do a great job.